Good evening and welcome. This is episode number 18 of the Awaken Woman podcast, and tonight we're going live. We're going to be talking about dealing with grief and loss. And first of all, I would like to say that oftentimes we associate grief and loss with losing the loved one, with someone passing away. And of course, this is the hardest and deepest pain when it comes to grief. It's so hard to let go of someone that was very important to us, and it was very present in our life, and it was a significant person in our life, to then not be able to see them, not be able to laugh with them, not be able to cuddle them, to touch them, and to carry on experiencing our life together. But the reason I wanted to bring this subject to you is I wanted to point, and of course talk about grief in general, but I wanted to point that there's a lot of situations in our life that require us to grieve, to feel the feelings of loss and grieve it. And those situations could be losing a relationship, it could be loss of a friend, it could be you moving towards the next stage of your life and then changing a job. It could be losing a job. It could be closing the cycle in your life and changing the environment or moving away. All of these situations do oftentimes require to be grieved, because the sense of loss and the sense of the sadness around something is essentially something that requires us to feel it, and it requires us to grieve that loss. It is so important to see yourself in the humanity of yourself. It's human to feel those emotions. It's human to feel the sadness when we lose something or someone. So what is grief, and why do we feel it? So we feel it because whenever you're losing something in your life, whenever there is, again, a change, a loss of a job or of a person or of a pet, it could be a pet, we have these feelings that are deep sadness of something that used to was in our life and was contributing to our everyday life, to then not being present and not being reachable anymore. It's not something that we can reach towards. So like with my father, when he passed away when I was 18, that was taken away from me, of course, and I didn't actually process the grief of my dad for about 20 years. And so I'll get to that. But how does unresolved grief show up in your life or in our lives? What are the signs that you can tell that you potentially have not processed your grief? Number one is compulsive behaviors. Oftentimes we struggle with having compulsive behaviors such as binge watch Netflix, binge eating, abuse of drugs and alcohol, indulging in sex, indulging in addictions. These compulsive behaviors can very well stem from the grief that is unprocessed and the loss of someone or something that is no longer in our life. And number two is withdraw from relationships and people. So when we're grieving or when we have unresolved grief, we may withdraw from relationships, we may withdraw from people in general. We might not be comfortable with being around people. So it's so important to understand that sometimes we might not understand why we withdraw from these situations, people, And that could still stem from our grief not being processed. Our emotions and feelings are still there, and we still have this deep sadness within us, and therefore we don't want to associate with other people. We don't want to be in social settings. We isolate ourselves essentially. Number 3 is over functioning. So this was definitely me when I lost my father at the age of 18, and I just jumped into just living my life basically. So I didn't process any of that. Of course I was sad, and of course the first initial reaction was crying, but I didn't really spend enough time to process the grief and the loss of my father, of my dad. So I went into over functioning. I went into just living my life and just suppressing all those emotions that were coming up for me, which then in years to come did definitely come up, and I was being very dysfunctional at the time, because I had so many feelings that were so unprocessed. Number 4 is irritability. So we get very irritable when we have this unprocessed feeling of sadness and grief and loss. We may be not really understanding that we are just have this anger within us, or we have this deep sadness just coming up and raising up for us randomly. And it's of course not so random. It is of course the fact that we haven't processed those feelings. And if you have been with me for a while, you will know that a lot of the feelings, when our feelings and emotions are suppressed, they will bubble up. They will come up in the situations that are very irrelevant oftentimes. Oftentimes it will be with our kids, oftentimes it will be with our loved ones, and we will take out our feelings and emotions that are unprocessed on those that we love the most. So we may become very irritable. And of course, in those times when we struggle with the grief and loss, and it's so fresh, whether it is we just lost that relationship, we've just lost that loved one, and they passed away, or our pet just passed away, or we have lost a job. And if we are in the midst of those difficult times, of course we will be irritable. Of course we will be potentially compulsive. Of course we will withdraw. All of these things will happen. I am talking, and that's quite normal and natural, I am talking about unresolved grief and unresolved feeling of loss. When this event happened a while ago, but we still struggle with the irritability, with over-functioning, with compulsive behaviors, and then we know that we have not processed those feelings and emotions when they needed to be processed. And of course it's never too late to visit that. It's never too late to grieve. I grieved my dad 20 years after he passed away. 20 years. Because I didn't have the awareness, I didn't understand, I didn't know that I needed to grieve him and actually do the process of grieving. So I just went along with my life, and of course, my life was being very affected by my behavior, by my instability and my feelings and emotions, by me being irritable, and that was how I functioned for a very long time. Number 5 is persistent sleep issues. If you have problems with sleep, understand why you are struggling with your sleep, and there is no real reason otherwise. Grief and the fact that you haven't processed those feelings and emotions may well have an effect on your sleeping as well. Number 6 is your physical symptoms. And if you have been listening to me for a while, you will know that feelings and emotions, when they are suppressed, when they are bottled up in our body, they physically stay in our body, and they do have a negative charge on our physical body, so they can create physical illnesses. Our unprocessed emotions can create an illness, because when we have unprocessed emotions, subconsciously our body is kind of functioning within those emotions and feelings. The only way for us to release the feelings and release and heal from those difficult situations in our life is to feel those emotions, which I will be getting to in a minute, into how to deal with grief and loss. So physical symptoms, you could get headaches, your digestive system might not be functioning well, you might have some heart issues, especially heart, actually, because grief is very much in the heart, is very much very heavy on the actual heart, energetically, emotionally, but digestive system also, because if it's our solar plexus chakra, which is responsible for our feelings and emotions, if that's very charged and blocked with all these heavy emotions, then we oftentimes will struggle with anything around this area in our physical body. And number 7, mental health symptoms. So of course, our feelings and emotions, if they're unprocessed, they will have an effect on our mental health. After, again, 17 or 18 years, maybe less, about 16 years after my dad passing, I found myself depressed. I found myself anxious about everything that was happening in my life at the time. I think it's longer than that, actually. But yeah, the part of that, because nothing really in my real life, in my physical world, was super dysfunctional or very kind of sad. It was the feelings and emotions that I have unprocessed, I have had unprocessed, and all of that kind of came and accumulated into depression, into the anxiety for no apparent reason. I found myself very, very unhappy, and I didn't realize at the time that this could be the reason. It was still the death of my dad that I haven't processed. So how to deal with grief? How can we help ourselves in the very difficult situations of our life? So of course, again, this could be the loss of your relationship, this could be the loss of the loved one, and this could be a loss of a job or a situation or a loss of a house. Even sometimes when we have fire in our home, it is important to grieve that. Any loss that happens in our life that we had an emotional attachment to is something that will have to be grieved, because, and in other words, we have to feel those emotions. So how to deal with grief and loss? Number 1, be patient with yourself. And that's so important, because oftentimes we just want to jump through hoops as fast as possible and just get on with our life and distract ourselves. And that's what majority of us are doing. But it is so important to be patient with yourself in that process of grieving, in the process of feeling the loss and actually dealing with the loss in your life. It is so important to be patient with yourself, to meet yourself where you are at. We are all very different and individual in the way we deal with these things in our life. Everyone is different. I'm super sensitive emotionally. So for me, I really have to sob. I really have to cry my emotions out. I really have to feel them, because I do feel deeply whatever I feel. And so I have to, by knowing myself and understanding who I am more patient with myself, even more patient, because I understand that these things affect me so much. Yes, being patient with yourself in that process of grieving is so, so important. Number 2 is be gentle with yourself. And what I mean by that is, in that time of grieving and dealing with loss, it is so important for you to not judge yourself on the process, for you to meet yourself with compassion and love and this nurturing energy where you just don't have agenda. You just meet yourself where you are at. You feel your feelings as they come, and you are being gentle with yourself. You can't step into this masculine energy where you go, I just need to get over this, or I'm just going to sweep it under the rug and I'm just going to get on with my life. Because as it did to me, and it manifested as depression, it will manifest in other ways or same ways to you. So it's so important to be patient and be gentle with yourself in that process. Number 3, keep your life as simple as possible. If you are dealing with deep loss, and you are struggling emotionally, and you're dealing with deep sadness around loss of someone, loss of relationship, again, any loss, fill in the blank, keep your life as simple as possible. Don't overcomplicate it at that time. Give yourself the time to actually grieve what you need to grieve. Because you rushing and taking on another project, or excelling at your work, or jumping into another relationship, all of these things are very destructive, and they are distractions to your process of grieving and of working with your emotions and your feelings around loss. So keep your life as simple as possible. Don't overcomplicate it, at least for the time when you have dealt with your grief and your loss. Oftentimes, and the reason I say this one, I thought I'd put that in there because we live in such a world where everything is such a fast pace. We have no time to feel, we have no time to connect, we have no time to be human anymore. We are so rushed into the next endeavor, the next trip, the next job, next goal, next achievement. We are so overwhelmingly fast-paced that we don't have time to actually feel what we need to feel in this lifetime, what feelings we need to be processing so that we can achieve the joy and happiness in this lifetime. Because essentially, when we have those emotions and feelings that we've held to, and these are the emotions that are, again, grief, loss, sadness, hatred even, all of these emotions are very low frequency emotions, and they have a very negative, heavy charge on our physical and emotional and mental body. So it's so important to keep your life simple as possible in that time, because you need to allow yourself for that space to grieve. It's not the time to go and pursue things. It's not the time to start another relationship. It is not the time to move along in your life when you haven't dealt with something that you almost need to put the closure to in this chapter of your life. Number 4 is journal. So journaling is an amazing way of processing emotions and feelings. And if you have been listening to my podcast for a while, you will know that that's definitely something I always recommend, because when we journal, we clear our mind, we clear our emotional body, we allow for those feelings to come through, and whatever needs to come through. So my suggestion to you, when it comes to grief and loss, to journal, basically completing the sentence, I am sad because, I love you because, or fill in the blanks, or something along, if this is your loved one, then I love you because, I am sad because, I feel this because. I want you to start recognizing the feeling and naming the feeling. Start recognizing what is it that you are feeling. How do you feel about the situation? And allow yourself, with no judgment, shame or blame, allow yourself to write about it and feel those emotions as you write it. Then you want to write, I am grateful for this situation, for you, because. The reason that you bring in gratitude into the journaling practice when it comes to when it comes to dealing with grief and loss, is because we always want to see the situations that are happening in our life from the perspective of everything happens for me, nothing is happening to me. So everything in life happens for a reason, and we can always draw lessons and learnings from any situation in our life. When we can bring that perspective into our world and have that mindset around life, we can conquer anything and we can overcome anything. This gives us an amazing resilience, an amazing way of dealing with life's challenges. And so in this time when we work with grief and we have those feelings of sadness, it is important to find why we are grateful for this person, what this person brought to our life when she was with us. What did we learn from them? What, whether it was a relationship that's lost or that's relationship that's ended, see those moments. See how you grew, how your growth developed with this person, how my lost dad, what he gave to me, the sense of security and safety, and this unconditional love that I felt from my dad always, and this beautiful connection that we had. I'm grateful for that I've experienced that in my life. And yes, he's gone, and yes, I do see, and actually I'm grateful today, I'm grateful for his death, because I have understood that I wouldn't be where I am today if he was still here. I potentially can't predict how my life would look like if my dad never passed away. And with the way I am today and the way I live and the fact that I love my life today, I can't take that away from myself. And I know that everything happens for a reason. And the death of my dad was meant to be the way it was, and it was meant to be at the time that it happened, because again, all my family and my daughter, potentially, she wouldn't be with me, she wouldn't exist, because my life could take a completely different trajectory, completely different path if my dad didn't pass away. So find those reasons as to why you are grateful for this person, why you're grateful for this experience, why you are grateful for this job that you've lost, what was amazing in that job, what you are grateful for, what you've learned from it, what is your learning, what can you take away with you. Journal about it. And then the last point in the journaling, I let you go because. So you complete the sentence to say, I let you go. I allow your energy, your body, your if it's a relationship, I let you go. I want you to go and experience life without me now, because it's so important to detach from something that's no longer in our life. Because when we hold on to it, and that's not to say that we should forget, that's not to say that we should now discard completely the 17 years of relationship, or that we should completely forget about the amazing father that you had, or amazing mother, or a beautiful grandmother that was always there and she was nurturing you and she was loving you. It's not to say that you forget, but you let go of the energetical charge when it comes to holding it on. My mum, when I went to medium after probably, I want to say 18 years after my dad passed, I went to medium and my dad came through, and he basically said that he cannot move away, like he can't move on in the spiritual realm, because my mum is holding him, because she was angry with him, she was blaming him, she's still, 18 years later, she was still holding on to the grudge of him dying. And when I went over and spoke to my mum after I saw medium, of course she burst into tears, and of course she had so much anger in her, which obviously just goes to show that what medium said was right and what was true. She was holding on to my dad. But when I explained to her and I said, Mom, you need to let go of Dad, because I'm sure he wouldn't choose that. He feels and he knows how he's changed our lives by him making the decisions that he made and by him passing away. But you need to let go of him, because one, you're holding on to him and you're holding this grudge and you're holding this anger, which makes you ill, physically, emotionally, mentally ill. And then you're holding on to his spirit, you're holding him hostage, where he's trying to move on. And when I told her that, when I shared that with her, after she calmed down, she have let go of him. And then I know that he's at peace right now, because she let go of him. So it's so important to let go of what's no longer in your life. It's not to say you're discarding, it's not to say you're forgetting. It's to say that you are coming to peace with the fact that this is no longer in your life. This person, this relationship, this job, this pet, whatever that is no longer in your life. Because when you let go of that, you can then move on in your life. You can get over it, and then you can move on with it. You can start the next chapter of your life without wasting your life away on thinking and wishful thinking of what would be if that person didn't die, or if that person, relationship, that job, if I got that job, or this man loved me more, or whatever. Because we also have to grieve something that we have never experienced, but we already had emotional attachment to it. We then have to grieve that too. And so wasting your life away to think about these things and to hold on for them for years on end, that's just not productive, because you keeping yourself stagnant and you're living in the past. And it's important to be in the present moment as much as you can in your life, and then have the idea for the future, have the vision for your future, move towards something that excites you. But past is in the past. So it is so important to honor the feelings that you're having. The feelings that are arising for you, they are so valid, and they are so, so important to honor them, to feel the feelings, to feel the emotions, because that's the only way to allow for those emotions to go through your body and leave your body. The only way to process emotions is to feel them. So lean in towards them. I think oftentimes we are scared to feel those difficult emotions because we are worried that we're never going to get out of them, which of course it's not true. We can always come back to our own self, to our state of homeostasis. We can always come back. And none of it is lost. It's not like we can't go back from it. Of course we can. And so have faith and lean towards it. Lean in. Feel the feelings. Allow yourself to cry. Allow yourself to journal. Allow yourself to feel. It is so human to feel. And you as a human being, your feelings are valid no matter what they are. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. It doesn't matter how you process these difficult times or these difficult feelings. It does not matter what they are, because they are yours and they are valid and they matter. So meet your feelings with compassion, with love, and feel them and lean into them. Actually lean into it. Don't shed away from it. And sit with your feelings. Allow yourself to sit with your feelings as well, because when we distract ourselves, when we again go into compulsive eating, compulsive binge watching Netflix, or going partying, whatever that is, whatever the distraction is, we don't actually allow ourselves to feel and sit with our feelings and emotions. And that's what suppression is. Suppression and bottling up is that. It's when we don't feel those emotions and feelings. Create a space for feeling your feelings. So allow yourself to have the space for it. So if you find yourself that you have a busy life and you never find yourself sitting down and being on your own and being able to journal, I hear so many of you when we talk about these things saying, I don't have time for that, or I don't have time for meditation, I don't have time to journal. I can't stress enough how important these things are. That our mental, physical, and emotional health and spiritual health will always be compensated if we don't honor our feelings and our emotions, if we don't create a space and container for us to go through whatever we are going through in our lives. We will not be sustainably healthy, whether it's mentally, physically. Of course, these things show up for everyone in different ways, but I can tell you now that we can't go through life and pretend we don't have these things happening to us. We can't go through life and pretend that we don't feel. And I know I always speak to you ladies, but I have so much compassion for men, because it makes me really sad to think how many men out there have never actually allowed themselves to feel properly, to cry, to be sad, to have those feelings and emotions that every human being has. So many men have had to suppress them because that's what society is teaching us. So for you women out there, allow your man to have feelings, allow him to nurture him in those feelings. Don't ever judge a man for having the feelings, for being vulnerable with you. And just remember, the fact that you think that it's not manly to cry or you judge them for it, 100%, yeah. Maxine said that men find it hard to let go of their emotions. The reason that they don't find it hard to let go because they don't feel them. They don't feel them, so they're not holding on to their emotions, men, because they don't actually allow themselves to feel them. They completely suppress them, they ignore them, and so there is no even letting go of it, because you have to feel the emotion to then let go of it. So I have so much love and compassion for every man out there, because I know how patriarchy and how patriarchy has treated men. Women have their own wounds from it, wounds, I can never say that, and men have their own wounds that came from patriarchy and what happened in the society. But anyway, so create space for feeling your feelings. Allow yourself to create that space, because if you don't, you will get distracted with your everyday life, and if you don't allow yourself to feel those feelings, they will be bottled up, and again they will cause your mental, physical, emotional distortion. They will cause you to suffer more, because they are not going anywhere. If the feeling isn't felt, it will be suppressed and it will be kept in your body. Seek support. Next step to work with grief is seek support, and it could be a professional support if you're really struggling, and if this is a grief of your child, a grief of someone that you really deeply loved and you don't feel like you can deal with it on your own, seek professional support. There is support out there. Don't ever block or stop yourself from seeking and asking for help if you can't deal with your own with your grief and your loss. But also sometimes having a friend that you can trust, and the friend that you know that they won't try to fix you and try to fix your emotions, and they will just create the beautiful, compassionate container for you to just feel. Those friends are jewels. Those friends are diamonds, because it's very healing just to speak it out and have someone creating that space for you to feel the feelings and be met and be seen and be heard with no judgment or agenda. So if you have a friend like this, then feel the grief with them and allow yourself to share it, and allow yourself to feel and have someone witnessing you in that pain. Because if you have a compassionate, loving friend that's just there to hear you, to nurture you in that grief, then it's a beautiful way of healing as well. Find acceptance in this situation. So if you're going through a relationship break, or if you have lost the love of your life, or if you have lost something that even didn't even come to fruition yet, and you had expectations about it and you lost it, find acceptance in that situation. Find acceptance in the fact that this person passed away, that was their journey, and that's what happened. Because, and you may say, oh yeah, it's so easy to say, it's easier said than done. And of course it is easier said than done, because these things are not easy to process. However, finding acceptance is the first step to actually start working with it. Feeling the emotions is first step, and then the acceptance comes afterwards. When we've journaled, when we felt our emotions, when we met ourselves with compassion and love, then we need to accept it. We have to accept the fact that this person is gone, because there is no other way. This is the reality, and it's so important to accept the reality the way it is, so we don't wish for another life. We don't waste our life thinking of what would be, what could have been, how would my life look like differently. Don't waste your life away. Don't wish your life away. Have faith that you processing emotions and going through grief leads to your growth. So this is another point, to have faith that everything that happens in our life happens for a reason, and everything that happens in our life is a lesson. There is a learning in every step of the way in our life, whether it is in losing this love relationship, whether it is losing this loved person, whether it is losing this job, whether it is moving. All of these things carry lessons. Even being hurt by others, being betrayed, being cheated on, all of these things, there is a lesson in that. When we can come from this mindset, and we can come from this perspective of, what can I learn from this? If we can start asking ourselves the question every time we go through a struggle, you will find much more peace in everything that happens in your life, because life's journey is a learning curve. It is, and our soul has a purpose, and our soul has this journey to fulfill, and all of these things that are happening to your soul on the soul level, these things are meant to happen to you, because that's how we grow. We never grow if everything is good and fine and we live our best life. We never grow then. We grow from, unfortunately, we grow from struggles, we grow from losses, we grow from disappointments. We learn and divert our life through those difficult times the most. So have faith that you processing your grief and your sadness has a deeper meaning, and there is a lesson in that for you. What can you learn from this experience? What have you learned from the person that you've lost? What can you oftentimes, like if someone is dying, we might want to contribute to their death, and then we kind of carry on with what they've been doing, or we like for instance, oftentimes victims of a rape, they choose to go into counseling, and they choose to go into, once they healed themselves, they choose to go and help others who are struggling or have been abused as well. So this is what I'm saying, there's always learning in that. And how can you become a better person, better human being from your experiences in your life? What is the lesson that you can take from that? Always ask yourself that question whenever you are faced with challenges. Find a deeper meaning and learning from the situation or this loss. And then last but not least, your self-care and your self-love is never more important than when dealing with grief and loss. This is the time to really nurture yourself. This is the time to really be with yourself, to meet yourself where you are at. I had to go through a lot of grieving for my relationship with my partner after 17 years. Even though it was my decision, I still had a lot of deep sadness and a lot of feelings of grief arising for me, because it was 17 years of my relationship. You know, he's the father of my daughter, and I love him deeply as a person, as a human being. And so I had to let go, and I had to come to the acceptance that he's never going to be in my life ever again. That this is something that's lost forever. He's obviously in my life because we are joined by our daughter, but he's never going to be in my life the way he was. And I had to grieve that too. So grieving and loss is difficult. These emotions and those feelings are a difficult, deep sadness, deep sad feelings. But please, I hope what you take away from this live today, from this podcast today, is to absolutely allow yourself to feel those feelings, to feel those emotions, to meet yourself with gratitude, with love, with understanding that it's okay to have all of those emotions arising, and it is okay to struggle. At times, that's just life's journey, and life is never meant to be easy. It's never meant to be always linear. Life is about those ups and those downs and those moments. And in those moments, when we go through struggles, when we feel deep feelings of sadness, of loss, of grief, allow yourself to feel them, and with no judgment and no shaming and blaming, just feel, because you are a human being and it's human to feel. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you have taken away something valuable. I love you so much, and I will speak to you soon. Take care.